Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City, here is Steve Malzberg.
Does the fighting include U.S. ground forces?
No, absolutely not.
So it's airstrikes only?
Well, not even that necessarily. I would not support any action unless there was a very clear understanding of what Maliki would or wouldn't do, who was running the Army, and what third parties were going to be involved.
It's not a question of who's running the Army. It's a question of the Army's running. Welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. No boots on the ground, not even airstrikes, unless she knows what Maliki is going to do and what who's running the Army. Okay, joining us right now, folks, is columnist for the Daily Telegraph in the UK and National Review, Tom Rogan. And he's also written a great column, Iraq's Borders Are Disappearing. Indeed, they are. Hello, Tom.
Great to be back with you, Steve. Thank you.
Always great to talk to you. Okay, what's your take on A, what's going on, and B, Hillary, if she were commander-in-chief, no boots on the ground, no airstrikes, unless she knew who was running the Army. What Army?
Well, what's happening is, at least in my opinion, the government of Nouri al-Maliki has been pushed into a position where, in the absence of American influence and support, they've run to the Iranians. And of course, the Iranians will love this because it serves their theocratic project to expand their base of power across the region. Maliki has been a sectarian leader, there's no doubt about it. It's absolutely right and necessary that the US would need to put pressure on him to entertain really major concessions to different Sunni parties in Iraq. But the real problem here is that Hillary Clinton, the president, have this deluded view. And quite frankly, I think they're being deliberately naive here, for political reasons, because they've had the briefings. They know Maliki's psychology. He comes from Dawa Party, which is a paranoid political party. They know that just saying, well, we're not going to do anything unless he does this first, it's not the way it works in Middle Eastern politics. The level of paranoia and political calculations means that if you do this kind of lecturing tone from Washington in the offset, all you do is force Maliki to make the decision that Iran is where he can go. And so Hillary Clinton is not behaving like a commander-in-chief. She's behaving like a campaigner-in-chief, quite frankly. And that, I think it goes to that, remember in 2008, the 3 a.m. call. Well, this is that moment. She's been asked serious questions, and she's giving the same waffling, really absurd responses that the president is giving.
And by the way, that's why we have no sofa, according to Paul Bremer, because we dictated to Maliki what he could do. He has to go to Parliament to get it passed, etc., and he wasn't going to risk that. So that's why, according to Bremer, we have no agreement. All right, we got a little over a minute left. The borders are disappearing. The cities are falling. Can this ever be rectified, in your view, Tom?
I think it can be, but the only way you can really do it, unfortunately, is to buffer up the U.S. military presence at the embassy, providing intelligence support. NSA needs to buffer up their presence. We need to provide more aviation assets, potentially strike capabilities as well, to give the Iraqis what they don't have. It's about guiding their process, allowing their military to develop. If we did that, it would work, but I fear that this administration doesn't have the strategic courage, quite frankly, to face up to the reality. So we're probably just going to have another drift, and we'll face it in terms of Iran's expansion of power and ISIS exporting terrorism to the West.
Very, very briefly, will we team up with Iran in any way?
I fear that we will, and the problem with that is that the Iranians, you look at what they do in Beirut, for example, assassinating politicians with Hezbollah. It's a disaster.
Yeah.
You cannot trust the Iranians.
Yeah,
So.
Well, you don't have to convince me of that. Tom Rogan, Daily Telegraph and National Review. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you very much. All right, folks, and we'll be back with more of the Steve Malzberg Show. But first, here's Dr. Chauncey Crandall with some cholesterol tips.